Imagine how many goals you could score with an invisible football. Well, by the end of today's video, I hope to have made one, and I'm going to show you exactly how I do it.
And I'm falling like the leaves on letting ground. I follow your footprints when I can't hold your hand.
Now, my inspiration for this video came from this football right here. This ball was banned in La Liga because they said it was too hard to see. Now, what if a football was so hard to see that it was almost invisible?
Well, today that's exactly what I'm going to do, make an invisible football, and then I'll test it out and face some shots from it, as I'm guessing an invisible football has got to be a goalkeeper's worst nightmare. So this Puma ball is the first step into understanding how this task will be possible, because right now it seems like a tough challenge to accomplish, but if I can take inspiration from this ball, it might point me in the right direction.
Right, so let's do a little test and see how difficult this ball actually is to see. Let's roll it away. It's definitely not the easiest thing, but it's also not invisible.
So you can see from a distance, this ball is definitely harder to see than a regular football, but equally is far from invisible. I mean, this dog managed to find it pretty easily. Now, the mix of colours on this ball is what makes it difficult to see. So what if I bought a football made out of darker colours? Would that make it almost impossible to see? Well, let's find out.
Right, so I bought this football because I think it might be a more extreme example of that La Liga football, and I'm hoping that this is going to be our first step to making an invisible football. Let's unbox it and see if it looks any good. Right, so obviously the La Liga ball was kind of dark colours and hard to see, and I'm thinking this is just an extreme example of that. These dark colours should make this ball really difficult to see as a goalkeeper. So I guess there's only one thing to do, and that's take it to the pitch and test it out. So this football is my first attempt at an invisible ball, and I'm not going to lie, right now it doesn't exactly look invisible, but we'll do a few tests to see how difficult it is to see, because it's definitely harder than a normal football, that's for sure. Let's test it. Whoa. Oh, it's there. No, I'm joking. Let's see what it looks like in the distance. I can definitely see that pretty well, I'm not gonna lie. Definitely not invisible.
So it was harder to see than a normal football, that's for sure. But once again, definitely not invisible. But let's see what it's like to face this ball as a goalkeeper.
I'm not gonna lie, this is kind of hard to see. It's not easy. Oh.
So it was a step in the right direction, but clearly we had to do something different than changing the colour of the ball. So what if the ball was transparent? Well, that was what I tried out next. Now, how would I make a transparent football is the first question I asked myself. Of course, it could be made out of glass, but glass breaks far too easy, so I had to try something else.
Right, so could what's in this box be the answer to an invisible football? Let's unbox it and take a look. Okay. There's a few things I need to do first.
So I bought these two plastic semicircles, cut the ends off them, and then glued them together. And I ended up with this, a see-through football. And this was my next attempt at making an invisible football. Now later I'll be doing a drop test with this thing, but first let's test it out at the pitch.
Right, so the transparent football, and I'm not gonna lie, this is definitely the best we've made so far. It looks unbelievable. It looks very invisible, but there is one little problem. It's a bit hard, so I'm not sure what it's gonna be like to play with. We'll test it out now, but if it's not good enough, we're gonna have to go back to the drawing board.
And it's ringing like it did in London ground. My lover would like to buy a flat in London.
Right, let's do the roll test with a transparent ball.
And I trade my tongue in just a hair.
That is unbelievable, I can't lie.
So this ball was looking promising, but if I can't use it like a normal football, for example taking shots, then it's going to be difficult to call this ball a success.
Let's do our first touches and see how it does. A few keep-ups.
So keep-ups with this ball felt pretty decent. It was a bit slippy, but overall not bad. But what about dribbling?
Okay, so this ball is the closest to invisible we've got so far, but there is a few problems. It's definitely not amazing to kick, which is definitely a problem because it doesn't really act like a football. It's so weird as a goalie to just have this ball in your hands. What the hell?
Passing with this ball was also not too bad, and it did look pretty invisible. But then I had to try the big one, shooting. Now, if I'm honest, you couldn't really strike this ball properly at all. So it's hard to class this as a football. So for that reason, the search continues. But before we do that, I had to do a drop test with a see-through football.
Right, so obviously I've got to do a drop test with this ball and see how strong it is, because a football has got to be able to bounce. So let's see what this ball can do. That wasn't great.
And it's ringing like it did.
So with the transparent ball failing, it was time to go back to the drawing board.
So I was at the pitch wondering how I could make an invisible football, and then I realised that I was standing on the answer the whole time: grass. If I could somehow put the grass onto a football, then surely the ball would be invisible.
Now, was grass the answer to finally making the invisible football? Well, it was worth a try. Now, taking inspiration from these Puma football boots, I started off by taking pictures of the grass and then heading to a site where I could customise my football. I printed the image of the grass over the ball and it looked pretty good. I paid £25 for next day delivery as I was so excited at the prospect of finally creating an invisible football.
So in here I have what could be the answer to an invisible football. You saw me design it online. I've put grass on the football, so hopefully it'll blend in and be invisible. Let's take a look at it.
Now, this is just seconds before I realised how wrong I'd got this design. Just wait and see.
Okay, I think this went wrong a little bit. This is not what I expected. What? That's all the grass they've put on? That is an absolute joke. That is not invisible, man. Do you want to know how much I spent on that? Do you really want to know? £80. £80 I spent on this.
So I had to mess around with this ball just to make sure, and yeah, definitely not invisible. But I did have another idea on how to make this grass football work. With the use of some green Sharpies, I could just draw the grass myself. So I started drawing and it was looking okay. I took it outside onto the grass to test it, and that's when I realised an ant had crawled onto the ball. Surely that's a good sign that it looked like grass to him at least. So this motivated me to continue. Until I'd completed it, I took it to the pitch and, well, if I'm honest, it's just not invisible. It's way too bright, not very realistic, and you can still see the white outlines of the panels on the ball. But I was not going to let this idea of a grass football pass me by, so there was one more thing I could try.
Right, so I do want to have one more go at making this grass football, as I think I've finally figured out how to do it, and it involves this thing right here.
So if I could put this AstroTurf on the football, then maybe we would have ourselves an invisible ball. So that's exactly what I did.
Right, so this ball, now I'm really happy with this one. It looks actually pretty close to invisible because it obviously blends in with the grass. Let's test it out and see how it does.
Now this was looking really good. It blended in with the grass really well, but there was one big problem with this ball that I'll explain in a second. But as you can see on the ground, it looked fantastic. So on the grass, this ball looked great, but if I wanted to fool a goalkeeper with it, that's not going to work, because in the air, especially against a blue sky, this ball was extremely visible.
The search for an invisible football continues.
So another fail, so close but not quite good enough. So I took a long hard look at myself to try and figure out what I was missing, and then I realised that I was staring at the answer the whole time: a mirror. Now, for centuries in magic, mirrors have been used to create the illusion of invisibility or disappearance. So if I could use this logic on a football, then we may have ourselves a winner.
Now, there is just one small problem with using a mirror. It's very hard and looks absolutely nothing like a football.
So I looked online and found this stick-on mirror, and this would be just what I needed.
Right, so this is a stick-on mirror, and if somehow we can get this on the ball, then maybe, just maybe, we'll have ourselves an invisible football. Let's try and figure this out.
So after covering the ball with the mirror, it was done. I took the ball outside and took these pictures. And it looked insane. At this point, I knew this was the closest I would get to an invisible football. I tested it out on the grass, and as you can see, the bottom half of the ball is literally invisible, and I was super happy with how it turned out. But now it was time for the big test. What would it be like to use at the pitch? And what would it be like to face shots from this thing?
And it's ringing like it did in Leningrad. My lover would like to buy a flat in Leningrad.
the mirror football. Now, I think this actually looks incredible. It looks the closest thing to invisible we got, and also the closest thing that should perform like a normal football. Now, first off, man, just look at this. Let's try this out. You ready?
So just look how epic this ball looks, and I'm really happy with how it turned out. I'm sure facing some shots for this thing is going to be pretty strange. Passing the ball, it just looks so trippy. In the sky, I'd say the ball was about 75% invisible, but then it was time to face some shots from this thing.
Whoa! Mate, that was really weird to see that. I'm not even just saying that. That was a nightmare. Mate, you see it so last minute. It's a joke. Whoa. Whoa. This is kind of scary, I'm not even gonna lie.
So this was my attempt at making an invisible football. I hope you enjoyed.